So you may be asking yourself, why am I here? I'm in a YouTube video. I asked this guy for a text box so that he would put text down. Well, I didn't have enough room. I had more things to say than that fit in the text box. So here we are. So I originally found you through the Nugget Climbing podcast. I was listening to some podcast episodes as I do on a long road trip, and I came across one of your episodes where you talked about some of your clients and you were mentioning their names. And I'm like, oh, I know these guys. And these are guys I want to be like. So I decided to reach out to you. A lot of these ideas I've kind of had floating around in my head, but I've never really had the one-on-one opportunity to ask a coach about it. And so I figured, it's probably time that I reach out to someone and ask for help with some of this. A little bit about myself. My name is Jason Dykstra. I grew up in San Diego, California, and just last May, I graduated from Worcester Polytechnic Institute over in Massachusetts. I'm now working as a software engineer for Salesforce, which I can actually see the Salesforce Tower from here. And I'm living up in the Bay for another couple months before I move back to San Diego. A little about my climbing background. I started climbing at this place called Grotto Climbing and Yoga. It was a really small gym, very, very like New England style setting. But over time it progressed into this competitive style gym. And eventually they opened a second location, Grotto Climbing and Yoga in Miramar. And this gym is completely comp style, which is amazing. Naturally, since a lot of my friends who introduced me to climbing were into competitions, I would follow them along and join these local competitions. And of course, over time, this kind of bred my affinity for comp climbing and learning these new movements. And for the first couple of years of my climbing career, I identified myself as a comp climber. As I went into college, I joined the collegiate circuit through USA Climbing. And after the first couple of years, which were canceled due to COVID, I ended up going to collegiate nationals in both 2022 and 2023, which were amazing experiences and just furthered my love for the sport. God, I hope that dumpster isn't in the video, man. I hate that thing. It wakes me up at 7 a.m. every morning. I swear to God. It wasn't until the latter half of college that I actually got into outdoor climbing. It was something that I had tried in California, went out with a couple friends in New England, but I didn't have my own car and I didn't have a lot of friends who were super invested in outdoor climbing, so it was kind of on and off. In 2022, the second half of the year, I started to explore some of these climbs, doing my first V10, 2 weeks later completing my first V11 outside, and just 6 months after that doing my first V12 and respectively first V13. I felt pretty good about myself after doing this, not gonna lie. I think it just proved to myself that there was a lot more I was capable of and that I just had yet to explore my potential outside. And that kind of entirely shifted my mindset from comp style to outdoor climbing, because I realized, wow, I don't just enjoy competitive climbing, I enjoy learning new movement, and you can find that outside as well. After this discovery, I moved to the Bay, and I'm just now exploring all of these popular outdoor areas for the first time in California. A lot of my friends are really surprised to hear that this year is my first time in Rose Valley, first time in Jade Tree, first time in Bishop, first time in Tahoe, really any outdoor climbing besides anywhere in New England. So, having a lot of fun exploring some of the areas out here. That being said, I feel like I don't really know how to progress past this point. This is kind of unexplored territory for me and where the YouTube guides and tutorials kind of end, which I've been learning off of my entire career. And I've been to a couple clinics before, but never one-on-one coaching. And so this is why I wanted to approach you and ask if I could receive coaching from you. My first long-term goal is to climb V15 within the next 6.5-ish years, before I turn 30 would be ideal. Having seen some of these harder problems and, succeeded in just a handful of sessions, I think my limit is still yet to be found, and I want to be able to push that over the next couple years of my climbing career. I don't really want to grade chase, but I think V15 would be a good range in which I should set my goals so that my motivation is to reach that goal. My second goal, of course, is to maintain a non-elite level presence in competition. This is something that I've done since I started climbing, and I really enjoy competition. I'm a naturally competitive person, and a lot of my friends in the scene also compete. So I'd love to keep up my participation in this area of climbing, but maybe not necessarily sacrifice my outdoor climbing in order to compensate for training for indoor climbing. The last long-term goal that I have is, of course, bulletproofing my wrists, elbows, and shoulders, as these are things that have caused me so much headache and strain in the past. And they've just been so tweaky all the time and so inconsistent. And I just want to take those variables out of the equation and make sure that they're bulletproof, they're strong, they're not going to cause me injury, and that I'm doing the proper rehab and strengthening for them. So what are my superpowers? Well, first of all, I'm very data-driven. I'm a very analytical person. I love collecting data on my sessions, like when I was sick, when I went outside, when I had comps, what comps I went to, where I placed in that competition, all of that data. So I have spreadsheets going back from when I started climbing back in high school, documenting every session, what I did, how I felt, continuing through 2022, where I kind of stopped documenting that because it became too much of a hassle. But I had every session documented, what workouts I did, how I felt on any given day, a pain threshold, any injuries or tweakiness I had. So those have been extremely helpful for me to learn from my past mistakes. Another superpower of mine that I've developed over time through competition is learning and drilling movement patterns. A lot of the time I will miss podium or miss a first place because I either don't see the beta that I'm supposed to use, or I just couldn't execute beta the way that I wanted to. And so over time I've learned how to not only learn a move and complete it, but to complete it enough times where you have the proprioception to know exactly where every part of your body is going to be on that movement, from visualization off the wall to executing it on the wall. Another superpower of mine is that I enjoy learning about sports physiology, physical therapy, and anatomy in my free time, which has helped me diagnose a number of injuries and figure out how to properly rehab different injuries. Anything that deals with a finger tweak, or I currently have a TFCC injury, or a shoulder tweak. I've normally had it before, I've documented how I got through it, and I can read research papers on the best ways to rehab that. Another superpower of mine, I think, is finger strength. I'm just going to put this on the screen. I don't really know how else to describe it. I think my last superpower would just be my motivation to improving climbing in general, which is probably best represented in my journal that I have, where I document any movements or climbs that I obsess over and didn't understand fully. I have a lot of climbs in here that I've tried to create that exemplify movements that I haven't tried before or I'm iffy on, including replicating some World Cup climbs in here. These are just things that I keep in the back of my head and say, okay, if you see a move like this, you have to try this beta. As for my weaknesses, I think my first one I would consider sticking to a training plan that I've created for myself. This is, common imposter syndrome. I create a training plan and I think, well, is this really a good training plan? Am I doing too much? Am I doing too little? Maybe I should be doing this twice a week instead of 3 times a week. And I just have all these doubts in my head and I'm not sure if I'm doing the right thing. And that causes me to do nothing. I end up kind of slacking off, not doing workouts, not following the plan at all because I have doubts about it. And I think this is where being provided a training plan gives me the assurance that it's been backed by someone who knows a lot more than me, and I'll have a much easier time following it. Another one of my weaknesses, I think, is hip flexibility, or generally hamstring flexibility, because my hamstrings are really inflexible. So anytime you're in a position where you have to, get a foot up to your hand on slab or something, or you're in a Gaston to bring your foot up and you have to grab your foot and awkwardly lift it up to get it to the hold, and yeah, I do that probably on the daily. Another one, I guess, which is kind of specific, is horizontal dynos on the wall where you have to dyno into a balancing position. Those run across dynos are really bad at staying close to the wall, and when you have to end up in a position where you're balancing on one foot, it makes it even more difficult. One of my other main weaknesses, I guess, would be eating enough protein. It feels like I need to eat an entire chicken every hour to get enough protein to not feel like shit all the time, which sucks. And also, I guess, donuts. So in conclusion, hopefully my rant was somewhat interesting to you. I'd love to work with you and take my climbing to the next level. This is something that I've been thinking about for a really long time, but never really had a good enough excuse to reach out to ask for coaching. But as soon as I heard your podcast episodes, I told myself, okay, I have to do this. So yeah, thank you for coming to my TED Talk. I hope you enjoyed. I hope that we can work together in the future, and I look forward to your response. Thank you.